There's been a vibe shift in the consulting and agency space in the last couple of months, around the last 18 to 24 months, and even in the most recent months, where budgets have gotten a little stricter. Clients are holding on to their wallets, they're slower to sign. Every dollar has to count for itself. This is word on the street and anecdotal data from talking to multiple people in the field who service a lot of agencies. And this isn't new. I think there's a lot of factors that are playing into this, and I'm actually seeing more bullish approaches now in 2026. But I think the macro shift, bigger shift is what I discussed in the services stack, where AI is compressing services from the bottom up, and the only durable position to sell your services are at the top of the stack, where you're delivering transformation, accountability, and belief, not just deliverables. I'll post a services stack somewhere here in the show notes and how to price that using the new Value Quadrant, 2 separate posts and podcasts that you can listen to. But what I want to talk about here is if the services stack is the thesis of what's happening, and the new Value Quadrant is how I approach pricing in the agentic era. But what I want to do here is talk about that vibe shift and how to approach it practically. Because in the services stack, I give you pretty much a thesis, a mental model of how to approach the agentic era and how to sell services in this new era that we're entering, as well as the new model that replaces the traditional agency and consulting model. And in the Value Quadrant, I discuss 4 quadrants of how you can start pricing and selling in the agentic era. Here in this podcast, I want to dive in specifically on the scope level. And it comes from a conversation that I had on a podcast with Taylor McMaster on her Happy Clients podcast, where we're entering or we've been in the post-scope era. So let's dive in. So the old model, the old way of scoping was pretty clean. There were simpler times. You scope the work, you do the work, like you do good work, you measure the work, you communicate the value, you show the value, and if the clients liked you, then you would repeat the work, you would do it over and over again. And in short, if you delivered was the scope of work, you kept the client. If you just did everything that was in that scope document, you were fine. But that's not how it works anymore, and I think we're sensing that, or this industry is taking time to adopt that mindset, because I'm calling this the post-scope era. Now, this doesn't mean scope creep. Let's be very specific about this, because I know you're probably thinking in your mind, oh my gosh, he's going to tell me to do more. So yes, but no. So it's not scope creep, because post-scope means that you actually have to match business outcomes to the work that you do and go beyond just the line items of the things that you're delivering, because things naturally come up. You can't scope everything that's going to happen in the engagement. Let's be real. If you've been around and doing this game long enough, there's the scope within the scope, the stuff that always comes up that you would never realize until you got into the account, until you lifted the hood and saw how the engine. When you start seeing under the hood, then you understand, okay, this is completely different or a little different or somewhat what I expected. It just depends on the client, depends on your industry, depends on your offering, depends on what your work you do. But you can't just do the scope of work anymore. You have to assume responsibility for the items that are peripheral, the items that are related to the work that you're doing, and match your expertise and insights on those items. Now, not everyone can do this, because not everyone can be a strategic partner. Everyone wants to be the strategic partner, the strategic vendor, but it's very few can actually do it, because the deliverables have to produce tangible outcome that the clients can see and feel and measure. Because if you can't see, feel, and measure it, you're going to try to convince the world that it exists, but that's a harder sale. So how does this look like? So for example, if you do paid ads, you're not just managing ad spend, you're just launching ads. You're focusing on generating qualified, not just leads, but qualified leads that convert. You're trying to provide insight on the conversions, conversion rate optimization. You're trying to provide insight on the offer itself. You might be listening to sales calls. You might be supporting on making new offers or new pricing or new packages. That's going beyond scope. Because traditionally it's hey, I'll just manage your stuff. I'll launch these ads. I'll have my media buyers do this, and we're set. That was back in the day. Those were the easy days, but you have to go further up the value chain. If you're delivering or you're building websites, you're not shipping web pages. No one cares about getting a new web page. It might feel good and fancy in the beginning, but you're creating an actual experience that drives business performance. Because a website is supposed to be around a client experience. And when you do that, how do you leverage messaging? How do you leverage positioning? How do you leverage video or imagery or suggesting on pricing or suggesting on go-to-market? So you have to go further up the value chain. The further you go up, the better your outcomes will be. And that's the post-scope era, not just what the scope of work says, not what that document says. And again, this is not for everyone because the scope is not the value. The business outcome is the value. And you're showing you care by actually caring, going out of your way to provide more value, to tinker and think, what else could we be doing? What else is more valuable? To think like an owner. And this is where a lot of consultants and agencies do far apart is that their entire organization, everything that you're set to deliver is based on the proposal. Your entire operations is based on how to fulfill the scope, not around the outcomes. Now, I know you might be thinking, Raul, you literally just described scope creep. I get it, but that's because you might still be thinking in deliverables. Let me ask you a really pivotal question. How do you scope relationship? Seriously, how do you scope relationship? You can't put that on a document. How do you scope strategic thinking, proactive recommendations to your clients? Like, hey, I noticed this thing, so we recommend this. Or even further, how do you scope this? Hey, we noticed this thing happened, so our team built that thing, and then we're ready to actually deploy this thing next. You can't just scope proactiveness because you can't plan for everything that's going to happen. So it's either going to be you're in response mode or you're in react mode. Response means that you're ready to be proactive. Reacting is just reacting to the environment, reacting to your clients. And that puts you like in a ping pong machine. It's not fun. So you might call this scope creep. I call this is the new normal. This is what it takes to win. And right now, most agencies and consultants aren't playing in that zone. It's because they're too busy doing the work to step outside of it. They're too busy in the grind, too busy in the wheel. And that's exactly how you get up, how you get replaced. That's not ideal. So before you touch your offering, I want you to read the room. So I'll go through a framework that I use with clients, but I want you to give you a macro picture to shape pretty much every decision in how you make the offers. Right now, your clients are buying one of two things. They're usually buying these two things. They're buying safety or they're buying certainty. So certainty is stronger than confidence, and safety is because they want to make sure that they're taking the best action with the resources that they have, and they don't want to feel stupid. I mean, let's be real. They've gotten burned in the past. A lot of other people have promised great things and they couldn't deliver. The average fail rate, I mean, it depends on the industry. There is an average fail rate depending on your industry and your offering. But like, dude, very few people care. Very few people go above and beyond. So they're comparing you to the average, and the average sucks. Okay? So the major two emotions that they're buying right now is I want to make sure that one, I don't make a stupid decision. Two, I make the best decision with the resources that I have, or if they're limited resources, I'm making the best decision with the limited resources I have. And number three, I want to be certain that the actions that I take are going to get me towards my goal. So those are the major two emotions. Some clients are right now buying growth and expansion. They're buying opportunity. And that's not every single client. And you know that probably if you're experienced, you've been in the game for long enough. Most clients are not always buying growth and expansion. That's what they say that they want, but really their buying motivation, their triggers are certainty and safety. So that's just the nature of the energy here. That's the energy in client services. They want to feel smart by working with you, and you have to do right by delivering the goods. Okay? So if what you're currently offering screams risk, when your buyer is thinking survival, then you're going to have different conversations. They're just not going to match, and you will lose the deal. So your initial offer has to be in alignment with what they actually want and what they're thinking and where they're going through right now. So if the client wants safety, you have to provide a way to reduce risk. This doesn't always mean money back guarantees. That's like minor league thinking. That's like the easiest thing to do, but it doesn't always mean to do that. If the client wants certainty, then you have to show a path and measurable outcomes of how working with you provides the outcome. If they want to count every dollar, show them the math. Now, this is an important note because I'm doing this podcast to the masses, not to you individually, because buyer psychology that I'm describing isn't cookie cutter. Okay, so this is a really big macro idea for you to think about and adopt it to your offer, to your industry, to your buyer type, to your personality, and to the stakeholders that you sell to. So you do have to customize this in a way, but I'm just giving you like archetypes to think about, because if your offer is misaligned, you're communicating different things. So again, you might be doing this right now. You might not be doing this. I have not seen a lot of people do this because a lot of the market right now still screams, we lead with our services. For example, we do websites. I see that a lot all the time. We do ABM. We do custom dev work. We do these things. To be frank with you, nobody cares. And I don't mean to be dismissive. I actually mean that as the most practical piece of advice I can give you. My first mentor that I've ever had, and I don't even know if he would call himself a mentor, but he built the first billion-dollar integrated marketing agency in the world. And Bernie, if you're listening to this, you're a huge influence. I appreciate you. He would listen to every pitch, any big idea, any fancy value prop, and these were some good value props. He would listen to them and he would say, who cares? Okay. He didn't say this to be mean. He's forcing you to go deeper. So here, I want to force you to go deeper. You deliver marketing services. Who cares? What's the bigger thing you're doing? You deliver custom websites. Who cares? You do video work and you develop custom like video podcasts. Who cares? You develop new AI workflows and agentic work, and you do development work and you develop enterprise-ready agentic workflows. Who cares? Again, it's not to really dive into and be dismissive, but I really want you to go deeper. Who actually cares? What's the bigger thing you're doing? What's the mission? Is there a center of gravity of your point of view? And this question, this is probably one of the most important questions, is who actually cares about the work that you do? Who? And when does your work become important to them? Because your offer is your positioning. That's the biggest takeaway that I want you to have from this podcast. Your offer is your positioning. So here's the framework that I use with almost every single client. And, it does change how you're going to sell, how you're going to deliver, how you're going to operate, how you're going to recruit, how you're going to lead. And it's based off of this premise. How we communicate is the epitome of everything we do. It's the most important. Communication is the most important skill set in this universe, in my opinion. We can dive more about that. Like, just to go on a tangent, the first thing that we did with AI was a chat interface to communicate with it. Just think about that. Okay. So, tangent here. How you dress is also a communication style. How you make an offer is a communication style. What you offer is a communication style. How you charge and what you charge is a communication style. Every single touch point from the first DM to the final invoice says something about who you are, what you believe, and how much you value the work you do. So if you're sending like a 20-page Word document proposal with walls of text, which I have seen, you're communicating something. It might be saying, hey, I'm an order taker. I'm here to do whatever you need. Here's the list of everything I'll do. That's okay. I wouldn't recommend that. But that's a scope document, not like working to be a strategic partner. When you present maybe a shorter document or just ways to work with you, maybe 3 pages or less, with clear options, clear outcomes, clear paths to work together, you might be communicating a little different than if you were just sending like a little 20-page Word doc. When you communicate with clarity, it's actually saying, here's what I want us to achieve together. Here's what I've done to achieve this in the past so that it aligns with your goals. Here's how we can approach it together, and here's the options that we can work together with. That's a different narrative. It's a different conversation. It's a different vibe between two parties. The actual proposal itself, the way you frame the engagement, from pricing, the number of tiers of how to work with you, how you de-risk the entry point, all communicate before you even say a word on the call. And based on what I've seen, most are honestly not saying the right thing, or you're not intending to say what you're saying with your current proposal stack. So I'll take it a step further. How you price is also a communication style. Now there's a plethora of ways to price. I wrote about that in the new Value Quadrant. Those are 4 additional options in the new agentic era. But when you undercharge, you're not just leaving money on the table. You're communicating that the work isn't worth more. You might be attracting a buyer who just shops on price, and you might be structurally limiting yourself to deliver at the capacity that your client actually needs. And I'll share with you a story about that a little bit later. But when you revamp your offerings, which is the first thing I do with clients, like I always look at their offer stack, how they're communicating, how they're positioning. It's not just to raise prices. It's just the way, how do we communicate the value of what we deliver, the value of our work, our stance on our work and on the market and the position, and how do we price according to that? And this sounds simple, but to be honest with you, I've seen this change. I mean, I can't like hype it up, but this has made radical changes in how you attract the right clients, the conversations that you have, and how you attract the right talent. And again, the services typically stay the same. We just communicate differently, and we have a new caliber of client that you're able to work with, and frankly, a different caliber of team and talent that you can attract. So an important note about this framework that we're talking about here is that you don't just have to change your proposal document and how you work with the client. You have to change the entire client experience, from how you run the sales calls, to how you present in your discovery, to how you onboard, to how often do you meet, the touch points. And how do you report? Like, all these micro touches will either start saying, yo, I'm a strategic partner, I'm here with you, or hey, I'm just here to do the work that's on the scope. Peace out. It's up to you. So what's your client experience that you're communicating? So I have a small confession to make that early on when I started learning about offers, like this was maybe over 10 years ago, I honestly used to think that an offer was just like what you do and here's how much it is for me to do what you do. Okay, so that's like basic thinking, my ESL brain over there, English as second language. So that's what I was first learning about offers. But after working with enough clients, doing this myself, working with clients in multiple verticals, and me myself doing this for myself, and then learning along the way, aka a la feedback loops and making my own mistakes, I've come to believe that how you progress the relationship is just as important of what you're selling. So I'll give you a real clear example here. So one of my clients does development work, like important development work, and they're targeting mid-market and some enterprise clients. You don't just go up to these clients and say, hey, let me audit what you're doing and let me just make a proposal and we'll be on our way. You don't do that. The offer is in alignment with the progression in the relationship we want to have and the positioning. So we start with education. We're starting with lunch and learns, meet the stakeholders, provide value, build a relationship, earn the right to be in the room. So that in itself is a sale. From there, you earn the right for the next sale, which is either a paid workshop or a paid discovery session. And this is, again, a discovery engagement that's risk-free. It's not super high cost, but it gets the stakeholders in the room and then really dive deep into their needs, what they're trying to achieve. And you've earned the right to be there. You didn't just pitch it cold, like, hey, let me just run these workshops for you. You earned the right to be there. And then from there, selling a productized offer with a risk reversal for engaging the client in the relationship to go even further to figure out the actual true larger scope. So there's multiple ways that we can channel this because not every client, to be honest with you, buyers' journeys are not just a linear line. So you're literally creating like a maze and you're giving different options depending on which path the client takes and which path the relationship goes. So when you craft that experience there, they're making a small investment, but you're also working with them to de-risk the next stage. Remember, they're buying certainty, they're buying confidence. Now, does this mean that you have to be with the client and sell like super small offers for 6 to 8 months until they say yes? Maybe, but maybe not. It's not to belabor getting to the end goal. It's just you have to craft the client experience in a way that every stage builds upon itself and then every stage de-risks the next, and then both parties are happy and satisfied with the action that they take and the outcomes are in alignment. That the outcomes of what you're providing and what they want to get in their business or what they want to solve are in alignment. That's super important and that's part of the client experience. So again, de-risking, crafting the experience, making sure that each stage builds onto the next one. So we couldn't get to stage, for example, 3 if we didn't build the foundations for stage 1 and 2. And then we couldn't do the build on stage 4 if we didn't actually do stage 3. So everything builds on top of each other. And the work that you have to do anyways to get to stage 4, for example, let's say stage 4 is the actual full suite build, then you would still have to naturally do stages 1, 2, and 3 at any part of the relationship. You're just taking that part of your client experience, creating offers around it, presenting it, and having them choose their own journey. And working with them to build a relationship and the rapport, earn the right for the higher stakes. Because then, if you do this right, there's trust. And if we talked about this in the offer stack, and we also talked about this in the services stack, trust is the number one thing that you have right now around transformation, belief, and building real rapport with another human being that AI is not going to take from you. So that's one key thing to keep it. So I want you to take that and think about your client experience. Are you de-risking the relationship of working with you at different stages of the client journey? That doesn't mean you just have to do money back guarantees. That's not what de-risking means. You just want to give enough confidence with your offer to make it easy for them to take the next step and removing the friction of saying yes. There is a plethora of ways to de-risk. Money back guarantees, the easiest and the simplest, but it's not the only one. Because there's a plethora, it would not be prudent for just search it on Google. But it really depends on your offering, your personality, the actual risk of the work that you're doing, the type of work that you're doing, the client that you're working with, the industry that they're working with, your price point, your business model, and your growth trajectory goals. Those are like 9 different factors of how to de-risk an offer. I can't give you all the opportunities of how to do that because then that's literally like 9. What is that? 9 factorial. And if I just do the math here, that's like 362,880 ways of de-risking an offer. Okay, so that's I'm not going to be able to do that in one podcast. So just know that those variables you have to take into account to de-risk your offer. So how you communicate, again, your value, the confidence in what you do is encapsulated with your offering and the client journey and how you de-risk per stage and earn the right to work deeper with your clients. So like I promised earlier, I have a quick story for you. This is when pricing, like good pricing, can actually betray you. So one of my clients manages an agency. That agency is going to be fired from a plethora or a multiple of clients because they honestly priced too low. And that sounds kind of counterintuitive because they made an offer, they priced it low to win the deal. It felt safe. The client said yes. Everyone was quote unquote happy. But because they priced it low and they're running the traditional agency model, not the craft model, and they're still using a lot of labor to execute the work, they couldn't hire the right labor to execute the work because they didn't price it high enough. All right, so they didn't price it high enough. They couldn't contract the right labor to execute the work at the quality that they wanted. The client is not getting the quality that they need. They're actually not getting the outcomes, frankly. The agency looks bad. The client looks bad. Like everyone's like unhappy because the pricing wasn't aligned. So again, if you think that just competing on pricing is the only way, just know that there's multiple ways that you can compete, pricing being one of them. But this is a real life story. Like this is not too far out in the distant past, like recent last 60 days of where bad pricing can harm not only client relationship, reputation, churn rate, but also your next win rate. Like this, like if you can't fulfill on this, pricing is not going to be the game for you to optimize in. However, just know that they were not running the craft model. So if they were running the craft model, could they have competed with that price? Probably. But again, that's a different story and that's an if scenario. So I can never be sure about that. But I just want to give you an example because the main point is your pricing is a stance. Communicate your value. And when you underprice with no clear strategy other than being cheaper, you will be cut. Like you will be cut multiple ways. Either you will be cut from the relationship or you'll be cut because you can't fulfill or you'll be cut because you're not making enough margin and you don't want to work on the account. Like multiple ways that you're going to get cut. And I talk about this in the services stack and then how to price in the agentic era using the new Value Quadrant. I'll link those articles below in the show notes. So, but I think we're returning to the bespoke. So if you haven't read those articles and there's pieces, here's a quick debrief that the future of client services, of agencies, of consultants is just getting back to the bespoke, not being small for small sake, but I think there's going to be a significant rise of just 5, 10, maybe max 20 people agencies where they would take the place of traditional 50 to 100 people agencies. That sounds ridiculous, but hear me out. If they're leveraging agentic workflows and agents to deliver work and customizing their strategy and training agents to support how they think, and then only focusing on judgment, transformation, and belief with client relationships, one person can literally 10x work. It's not an exaggeration. That's literally the world that we're living in. And I wrote about that. And if you want to dive more into that craft model, head over to the services stack to learn a little bit more about that. But that model is the engine that's fueling this post-scope era playbook. Because we are in the post-scope era. You have to do more. You have to be able to deliver higher value up the value chain. And if you're still focused on the work and your margins and your investment and your time is being sucked down just delivering the work, not leveraging agents and workflows to help you offset that work, then you will never get the opportunity to think, to breathe, to strategize, to have more creative juices going. All right. So that's one of the key things, the return of the bespoke. So you don't have to have 20 or 100 or 50 clients. You can just focus on a small portfolio of really solid clients that you have deep relationships with. So I want to close this podcast by going back to a simple premise that I wrote eons ago at this time, is that belief is your differentiator. What you believe to be true about the work that you do, about how you leverage technology, about the human aspect of what you deliver, it's not going to close the deal by itself. Like belief isn't going to close a deal, but it is going to help you with a stronger offer, communicate the work that you do, and align with the right kind of clients that you want to work with, attract the right kind of talent that you work with, and how you're going to lead that talent. And this is going beyond just like brand values and how you're executing those values. This is you living and breathing your own ethos and communicating that in every single touch point of what you do. So I think the key thing is, what do you believe in? Because your clients want to know. They want to know where you stand. What do you believe about your work? Do you and your clients align on your beliefs? They also want to know, where's the energy here? Who are you? What kind of energy you're bringing to the table? What's the center of gravity of your point of view? Actually, one of my clients literally wins deals and attracts new clients or new opportunities because of the energy and how they show up in the room. It's contagious. So how are you showing up? What's your point of view? What's the center of gravity that you're building? Because your content, your offers, your pricing, your mission, they all have to say the same thing. And they're saying something, but are they saying the same thing? And remember, your offer is your positioning. Every proposal, every price point, every touch point, every single client experience from the first DM to the first invoice, to the first onboarding call, it's all one message. And coherence, everything in alignment, is actually rare. And incoherence, it's not that it's not rare, it's actually replaceable. And both are a choice. You can choose to be coherent in alignment with what you do and what you offer and how you position, or it could be incoherent. Both are a choice. Now, if you want to go deeper on how the post-scope era affects your specific situation, reach out to me. And if you like this podcast and you like this content, it is said, this is a stat that I heard, that the average person, like you and me, affects 10,000 people in their lifetime. So if you found this useful in any way, shape, or form, share it with someone else. You never know how you might be a positive influence in their life. And if someone did share this with you, consider subscribing. We have here on podcasts as well as Substack, where you can listen to the same podcast and get the articles directly to you. And if this is your first time meeting me, hi, my name is Raul. I'm here in San Diego, and I help services founders redesign how you price, sell, and operate in the agentic AI era. And if you're ready to talk about the next version of your firm, either your agency or consultancy, reach out at dogoodwork.io. That's dogoodwork.io. And until next time, do good work.